Welcome into this Five Clubs conversation, a different way for us to approach a major championship with the U.S. Open upon us. How do you wager on a major championship? And it's not that we have been averse or not ready to do this. We've just taken our time. And who do you do it with? Well, the guy who's going to be joining me, I've known for a long, long time. He was a golf professional, and he's made a pivot in his life to now being a leader when it comes to understanding the odds, the wagering, and the big board of professional golf. Stewart from Read the Line. I've known him, like I said, for a long, long time. So it's our first time diving into how do you wager and bet on a major championship. It's coming up right now.
In this split second, your hands make all the difference. It was time for a grip to help them own the moment. Introducing Reverse Taper, technology to stabilize both hands for a more square putter face at impact. The most important split second in golf. Reverse Taper, only from Golf Pride. Respect the grip.
And with that, we welcome him in. How are you, my friend?
Gary, I couldn't be any better, and to be with you before this big matchup at Pinehurst. Let's talk some golf and a little bit of history, have some fun, some tradition, and do what we do.
You and I have been talking for the last several years as you've embarked on this chapter of your career, and it wasn't with hesitancy. It was with me trying to understand, this part of what is becoming a big deal, not only in golf, but really in all of sports, and that is understanding the wagering side of things. And what you've done is you built, and I'm kind of reluctant to use the word brand, but you built your business with the credibility of speaking to a lot of people in this industry, specifically in the golf space. And I'm excited to do this with you because I appreciate the way you've done it, how you're doing it, and what you're going to do is you're going to educate me and in turn educate our audience on how to approach trying to wager on one of the biggest events in the game, and that is the U.S. Open. So with that, let me start with this. How would you assess not only the way you've looked at the first two majors, the way the first two majors have been produced and the results that we've gotten?
Well, I would start with the fact that we've got a couple common threads. There have been some gentlemen that have been playing some very, very good golf. There's 4 guys that finished in the top 10 of both of them. And one of those guys is the only guy that finished in the top 5. And of course, we're talking about Scotty, we're talking about Xander and Bryson. And then that fourth guy, that's Colin Morikawa. He has a 3rd at Augusta National and he has a 4th there at Valhalla. So for me, it starts with before I even look at the betting board or the odds, and sure, I've been monitoring the futures, but as I start to, roadmap what I think it will take to win at Pinehurst #2 and the U.S. Open this year, I just kind of want to see who's been playing their very best in the biggest events.
When you look at the venues, we know Augusta National is what it is every single year. Valhalla, there were particular circumstances around that week, especially as it relates to weather, softness of the golf course. I thought an absence of really complexity to the green complexes. I thought the greens were not only easy to read, they were in pristine condition. Now we come to a place that is unorthodox in a handful of ways. How does that kind of change or present the kind of the complexion of your big board as it relates to Pinehurst #2 in the U.S. Open?
I would say the biggest difference is that when I looked at Valhalla, I looked purely at physical golf skill sets, whether that be approach play with a long iron or that was off the tee acumen, whatever it might have been. When I start with Pinehurst number 2, or I start with someplace like Augusta National Golf Club, the first key that I'm looking for is, can somebody game plan a golf course of that magnitude? Can somebody figure out the strategy that is necessary in order to be successful and be a contender on Sunday? And, for me, when you look at those people that do play very well, so I'm sitting at Jack's house right now. I'm at Muirfield Village Golf Club. So Jack won 6 green jackets because he was one of the smartest guys that ever played golf as far as having a very high golf IQ. Tiger the same way. Look at Scotty. Look at the places and the things that he's been able to do. He has such an advantage at a place like Augusta National because of his ability to game plan and come up with a successful way with which to try to attack the golf course. Even this year when it was in the high winds, he just completely outclassed the field on that windy Friday afternoon. Now, fast forward to, Pinehurst number 2, where we have really no clean lines. We have wiregrass. We have all of these different angles coming into play, switchback holes, all of these Ross features. And it just really falls into Scotty's, hands because he is the most cerebral player out there. So for me, as we kind of switched from the mindset at Valhalla over to Pinehurst number 2, that would be the first skill I'm featuring, and it's cognitive and it's not physical.
Keith, when it comes to high performance, you mentioned these guys who played well in the first 2 majors. It affects the odds of whenever they play next. And in particular, the next major championship. What is the most effective way for people to bet Scotty Scheffler?
Ooh, okay. So this is a great question. And, if you just go on to golf Twitter or social media, or you just go to DraftKings or one of those sites, you're just going to see people kind of predicting a lot of names as far as when it comes to a winner. And there's not a big explanation as to what exactly is going on there. Or if you're just surfing again on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and you'll see somebody who claims to be a golf betting handicapper or tout, and they'll have like 5 or 6 names, and there'll be some odds numbers next to them, but people don't really know what that means. And they say, well, Keith, why wouldn't I just pick Scotty? He's the favorite, right? He's coming into Pinehurst next week, or this week, he's less than 4-1, or he's at plus 375. And then next week, he's at right around 4-1 at plus 400. Well, first of all, what does that mean, Gary? Okay. So that number is called the money line. And when it's a positive number, that's the money that you're getting paid out. So at plus 400, that's 4-1. So if you put $100 down, you're going to get 400 plus your original 100 back. That's 500. If it's reversed, if it's a minus number, that means that person is basically favorited to do something, and there's a better chance of that happening. So if it was, minus 400, then it would be a 1-4 odds. So if you put $100 down, then you're only going to get $25 back. And it's very important that people understand that, because when it comes to payouts, they see all that there's 5 names there, and you have to come up with a way that even if you did pick Scotty to win within your budget, do you not pick too many people in that you don't make any money? So if you pick 5 people and Scotty wins and he's one of them at plus 400, well, you're actually going to lose money on that transaction for the week. So if you diversify your card with a couple different people, you have to be careful. So I tell people all the time, if they're very new to betting, I said, we're coming into a big event, whether it was the Masters or Valhalla or one of these majors, just bet Scotty. I guarantee you'll be there on Sunday. You'll have a great Sunday sweat. You will get your money back, but you're going to go basically single bullet option. You're just going to pick one guy and you're going to go have at it. Now, if you're somebody that likes to dabble in the prop markets and the head-to-heads, and maybe you live bet a little bit, then what you have to do is either you have to increase the amount of money that you're going to bet on Scotty so that his payout is multiple amounts. Now you're risking more, but of course he's the favorite. So I might bet 3 times on Scotty so that 4-1 becomes like a 12-1, because I'm going to bet 2 or 3 other people. And those other people might be at 30-1, which would be plus 3,000, or they might be 50-1, which is plus 5,000, or they could be plus 10,000. People see these big numbers, but that's really just 100-1.
The odds on someone like Xander Schauffele and Bryson DeChambeau, because of performance in the biggest events, in terms of finding value for either one of them as it relates to Pinehurst number 2, when you look at those 2 players, kind of break down first Xander and then Bryson for us.
Well, it's been interesting. we always come up with these sayings in golf, right? And it's always been the big three. Who's the next big three? Well, we have a big three right now, and they're all playing very, very well. So we've got Scotty, Rory, and Xander here this week at the Memorial, and of course they'll be there next week at Pinehurst #2. Now, this week at the Memorial, they are all single-digit odds. They're all under plus 1,000, and they will all sit there because they've been great. Xander won the PGA, Rory's won 2 of his last 4, and of course Scotty, I mean, he's Scotty Scheffler, right? So when you look ahead in the futures boards, all of a sudden you see that those numbers have gone up. Well, it's the magnitude of the U.S. Open, and also those futures boards haven't adjusted yet. And it's the same thing for Bryson, who sits at a number like plus 2,000 or 20 to 1. It really becomes a factor of, and this kind of goes into, because my background and the reason we originally met, Gary, was that I was a club professional. I was a PGA professional up in New Jersey. And during the celebration of one of my 3-day member guests, I thought it would be cool if you wore my club logo. You remember this, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
It was the 70th anniversary of my 3-day member guest at a very, very old William Flynn golf course in Princeton, New Jersey. And you wore it on morning drive that day. And everyone, we all celebrated it that night, and we had screenshots of you, with the club logo and everything. But I come at this from a very green grass perspective.
Yep.
And when I handicap golf tournaments, people ask me this all the time. They go, Keith, like, how do you break down and how do you figure out the winners? I've been very successful at this because, I've lived my life as a golf geek. I was scrubbing hooks when I was 13, 14 years old. So I've been around a golf course and I notice things. And of course, as you can see, I'm at one right now, handicapping the Memorial with 73 guys here in a signature event for $20 million. So when I look at the field, to me, odds are kind of like sucker pins. Right? They sit out there. And if I put up my phone in front of you and I showed you the odds board for the U.S. Open, instantly, like a magician tricks you, your attention would be kind of like driven towards one of these names. It might be a current hot button topic name, or it might be the favorite. But I could guarantee that I could guess who you're looking at as if I was guessing a card in a card trick. Right? So I stay away from the odds. That's why I feel like they're like sucker pins. I break down the golf course as if I was coaching Gary Williams to compete at Pinehurst #2. Like he qualified on golf's longest day just a couple weeks ago, right? So when we approach that, what is the skill set needed? What is the architecture calling for? What is the agronomy telling us? What is the weather leading up to? What are the course conditions? And we go through all of those factors because as a PGA coach, that's the way that I would approach it if I was playing in it or if I was coaching someone. Then from there, I look at, okay, well, all right, now I know what those skills are. Who's good at those things? And in my mental Rolodex, I went to 22 tour events last year in 2023, and I'm on pace to do the same thing again this year. So I see these guys in action, and with my educated eyes, right, I've taught the game for over 12,000 hours. I'm able to say, like, looking on the range, like, who's working and who's working. So who's got it working and who's working on it, right? And I can tell, and then I also know what they're good at. So now, okay, have they played there before? Maybe it's Muirfield Village, but okay, it's Pinehurst. Many of these guys haven't played there before, or maybe they played there in the USAM. How have they done there before? So we're going into the horses for courses situation. Okay, and how are they playing recently? Are the things that Gary is good at, is he currently good at them, or is he in a little bit of a slump? Now, this comes up with a list of about 10 to 12 names, and I break it down from there. Now, keep in mind, I've barely even touched analytics, which is far different than a lot of people that are yelling at each other on Twitter with Excel spreadsheets in their mom's basement, right? I'm a golf pro, right? As such, I have a lot of fun figuring out the puzzle week after week. So now, all of a sudden, I'm going to say, all right, I need the analytics to help me understand, is this guy in good form? When I figure out that usually kind of gets me down to about 4 or 5 names. And then from there, now I'm going to look at the odds board and I'm going to try to figure out value, right? Bryson has been a good value up until this point. And if he stays in the 20s because of his level of ability and what he's shown on a major stage, you know what? I think that he still remains to be a good value. An excellent example of this would be Jon Rahm. Jon Rahm is still a world-class golf player, right? He is still top 10 in the world. I don't care what tour he plays in, the skill set that man has, the multiple major championships, he is that good. When you see him up in the realm of other guys that haven't won majors, or he's in the plus 2,500 land or something like that, that is an extreme amount of value on somebody that a year ago going into the U.S. Open was 10 to 1 or plus 1,000. I mean, less than half. It's interesting going into the PGA, he was the favorite because he came off 3 wins in the Masters, much like Scotty did this year. And then a year later, he was double that. So those are the types of then, when I get to the odds, I'm looking for those opportunities based upon the fit, the form, the numbers, and then actually what those odds are. And when you talk to me about Xander, well, up until a month ago, he had never really closed it out. So he had the same odds going into Valhalla as Brooks. So if you had asked me this question the week of, I wouldn't have had a very high confidence in Xander. I said, well, he's got 8 top 10s this year, and Brooks has 5 major championships. The odds are telling me that if they're even, I got to go with the guy that's got the 5 trophies. Now, great job by Xander. He pulled it off, and now he's in consideration. But is he at the level of a Rory and a generational talent like that? His odds show that right now. That might be based more on form. I might look for more value further down the board because is he the type of champion that's going to win 2 majors in a row?
The Rory question, and again, just one of the reasons why this conversation is happening, and I hope many more to come, is because you do it the way that you do it. You're present on site. You want context that goes beyond spreadsheets. You want to understand the agronomics. You want to understand really the environment these guys are playing in, and that's why you make the effort to be at all these events, as you obviously are going to be at Pinehurst. Rory's performance in 2014, he left Pinehurst after a top 25 and went on and won the next 2 major championships. I was having this conversation just a little bit ago with Johnson Wagner and Taylor Zarzour about his greatest weapon is his driver. Will it be negated as all? Can he hit it with liberty around Pinehurst number 2? The greens themselves. How do you assess Rory and Pinehurst number 2?
Rory's going to be a very popular pick. He's obviously coming in world-class form, great Rory form. I don't see him as being the prototypical guy that suits this golf course and the way that Ross designed it and the way that it works through the sand hills. And the reason that I say that is that I'm not sure that he possesses the short game aptitude or creativity, or he's got enough tools in his tool chest in order to get it done there. Now, he is the number 1 driver of the golf ball on tour. That includes a list that Scotty Scheffler is on. There is no doubt about that. Where Rory has struggled this year, it's been on approach. It's been on longer approaches. He has that long left missed. He had it at Bay Hill. He's had it a couple other places. That concerns me there because we have a tremendous amount of long iron play. If we start to really handicap Pinehurst after the cerebral contest of coming up with a game plan, number 2 on my list is approach play from over 200 yards. This is a very long golf course at a par 70 scorecard. So he's going to need that. And these turtleback greens, they're going to reject some shots, and he's going to be able to have to play those low skidders into some of those pin locations. He's going to have to be able to work the ball both ways. Rory's very good at drawing the golf ball. When he have to hit high fades into those right pins or a green that's sitting in one of those switchback holes, where he can hit that draw off the tee and he feels extremely comfortable, and then he's going to have to hit a cut into one of those greens like Ross is so good at doing. I wonder about that challenge over 72 holes. So will Rory be there much like he was in 2014? There's no doubt in my mind. He's that good of a player, and he gets himself that close off the tee. But what I worry about is that if you put him head to head against a guy like Scotty, who is so good around the greens, or somebody like Cam Smith, who he lost to at the 150th Open Championship. So somebody will say, well, Keith, he came in 3rd at the Open. Well, yeah, but he drove like half the greens. Like, that's a huge advantage. Cam Smith beat him that day because he was that much better at ground golf. And I know that, I love your work on architecture because, you could say more eloquently than me that there's aerial architecture, and we see that a lot over here in the States domestically, and then you see a lot of ground game over there in Scotland. And Donald Ross came for Royal Dornoch, and this was he designed Pinehurst number 2 very early in his career. Everyone's going to go to Wikipedia and they're going to say, oh, Donald Ross had 400 golf courses, blah blah blah. Yeah, but this is very early on when the Tufts family brought him over in order to come up with this template masterpiece. And of the other 400, there are so many golf courses that, the variety and everything, but this one is really, really unique. And I wonder about the ability to lag putt and hit those creative shots around the greens. And when you have a guy like a Cam Smith or someone like that, Patrick Reed, those guys that are really good at scrambling, a Steven Yeager in a modern sense, those guys have such an advantage. And go back to those leaderboards. You can see it. It permeates through all of it. I mean, Brandt Snedeker was never known as a driver of the golf ball. The guy got the ball in the hole. He scored better than he played almost all the time. Same thing with Payne Stewart. He was an incredible wedge player. And if we just want to look at it past the renovation in 2010 and what Bill and Ben did, I mean, they're really testing how good your acumen is around these turtleback green surfaces.
Yeah, Keith, to amplify your point, Brandt Snedeker finished in the top 10 at the U.S. Open at Pinehurst in 2014. And you can look at some other. Jason Day has a fantastic short game, was one of the best players in the world then. Not that he's not still an elite player. He finished in a tie for fourth. You can go back to 2005. Tim Clark, who, again, Tim finished in a tied for third. You had someone, obviously Tiger was as good as anybody. Sergio had great creativity. So it's not just the fact that the greens are so complex. It's also starting in 1999 when they brought the U.S. Open there for the first time, as opposed to executing short shots with essentially one option, which was, you know what, lay a 60-degree wedge open and get the best result you can get. You can hit a variety of different shots. What does that do to your big board and the number of players that you start to assess who can have a reasonably good week at a place that you're going to miss 22 to 25 greens and you can be on the first page of the leaderboard, and that your abilities, strokes gained around the green, can be amplified even more? What does that do to your handicapping?
Well, we live in wonderful times. I mean, the fact that we could have this conversation via the internet while I'm in Ohio and you're in North Carolina is really cool to me. But at the same time, when we start to break down, and if you just want to drill down on around the green play, we can. We keep statistics on whether or not that is from heavy rough, like an Oak Hill type situation where there's just walls around those greens and everyone just hits the old chunk and run, or it's from short grass like a Southern Hills or an Augusta National. And then we can break down who the guys are that are really good from those tight lies. And, that like putting is one of those things that really separates a field. And when you start to talk about splitting hairs or picking the winners, and when you want to bet or just head-to-head matchups, the reason you see these guys that always show up at Augusta National or venues like that is because they are so skilled in and around the greens and they are so good at lag putting. I guess in general terms, you and I would call it touch, but there's definitely a way that in this day and age that we can separate the two between the guys that always seem to be really good when it comes to heavy rough. The run that Victor Hovland went on last year when he won at Olympia Fields, when he won it here at Muirfield Village, you know what? It was just green sites that were these were like U.S. Open style golf courses, like in Oak Hill. You know what? He was there, going head to head with Brooks at the end, but he could just hit that chunk shot, have the ball come out with, that's a very limited feel. The types of shots we're going to get to see are going to rival that of an Open Championship, but we won't have the weather conditions. So these guys are really going to be able to get into it. They're going to say, oh, Bermuda grass, this and that. Like, forget that stuff. I mean, the surfaces are going to be so tight there and so perfect. If you're not really good at clipping that golf ball, right? If you're not Nipsey Russell, man, off of that turf, you are just cooked. And you're going to see somebody like, hey, go back to the game plan comment. Martin Keimer, he said, all week I'm going to putt him. I don't care where I am. Well, that was a strong strategy for him, and we're going to see a lot of that. But overall, the guys that are able to spin it up and down and through those hollows and swales are going to have a huge advantage, and we know who they are.
Yeah, one of those guys is not particularly right now, and that is Jordan Spieth, who I thought, Keith, at the beginning of the year, I thought that number 2 lent itself to stylistically him being able to show off the closer he got to the hole. And I want you to kind of couple him with somebody else like Justin Thomas, who his statistics, strokes gained around the green, very, very good. His putting, abysmal. So how do you kind of marinate someone like Justin Thomas, who's very good at one aspect of it, but doesn't punctuate it with the thing that really pays it off, which is his putting?
Well, this becomes very venue specific. And I may blow your mind with this comment, but you don't have to be a good putter to win at Augusta National. And I firmly believe that that's the same set of characteristics that we're heading into at Pinehurst number 2. When you see these turtleback greens, you just look, everyone's drawn to the edges, and it looks like, oh my goodness, these are so difficult. But because of the way that they're set up, most of them are pretty flat. Yes, they have sections to them or whatever, but these guys are really good at hitting it close. For the most part, you don't have to be an incredible putter to win at Pinehurst number 2. You have to be a great short game player. And the same is true at Augusta National. When you think about it, the greens there are so complicated. And, even the best putters in the world. And yes, for every Ben Crenshaw, there's been a Hideki Matsuyama.
Sure.
Right? And we know everyone is so defensive at a place like Augusta, right? That at the end of the day, you end up like it kind of mitigates how good of a putter you are. So I feel like that's going to be a similar situation where the greens aren't going to necessarily reward the best putter. They're going to reward the best, basically, short game scorer. And I think that that's going to rely more on the wedge than it is going to essentially just rely on the putter. I mean, a lot of that is like similar here to this week at Muirfield Village, right? This is one of the venues on tour, one of the very few that tests these guys around the greens. Now, albeit it's a different test than what we're going to see at Pinehurst, but it's still a good test and a good preview for next week. But the putting here, look at the past champions. It's not a list of guys that, again, are fantastic with the flat stick. So if you just wanted me to compare Jordan and Justin head to head, first of all, Jordan's claim to fame was that he was a great ball striker and he was a very timely scorer, right? He hasn't hit his irons great in months. So for me, I just think that his wrist is hurt. You look at how good he is off the tee, Gary, right?
Yes.
So where is that ball sitting? Where's it sitting? It's sitting on a perch. It is not sitting on the turf. Okay? So he's great off the tee because that lead wrist isn't colliding with the turf.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you put the ball on the ground and this guy looks like he's gun shy. I mean, and that's just my PGA eyes watching him out here. It's just when he goes to rip at it on the ground, and now we're going to go to one of the most firm tests in all of golf, like we're playing at St. Andrews or Royal Troon in a couple months, and we're going to go, this guy's just going to go after it, and he's going to just, he's going to create low point in front of the ball. I'm not so sure about that. I think that creates a lot of reluctancy in his mind. So for me, he's somebody that even at the number he's coming in at, he's much further down the board and really not a consideration for me like he was, what was he, T17? So top 20 in 2014 because of that wedge game. And I love JT here because I think JT can be more creative off the tee, much like he was. So a great comp course. And a lot of people don't see this because they look so different, but TPC Sawgrass is a great comp course for Pinehurst number 2. Now, I know that you would see that because you're an architect aficionado, but like the average fan isn't going to see that, and the average bettor isn't going to see that. And they would say, well, Keith, why do you say that? Well, Sawgrass takes tremendous strategy. You look at the type of people that do well there, they're going to do well at Pinehurst number 2. And everyone forgets this, but back in the early 40s, Pete Dye served, and he was stationed at Fort Bragg. And he had to take his commanding officer all the time down to Pinehurst number 2. And he spent like 6 months studying the golf course and playing it. Well, we all know where he ended up and what he ended up doing, but this was early on in his life. So Donald Ross had a major impact on the way that guy created golf courses, right? So French Lick, there's the Ross and the Dye, that combination, most people say, well, that's a really interesting juxtaposition. But at the end of the day, like there's a ton of influence there. And it's not like he didn't have influence on Bill and Ben and Tom Doe and all these other great, and Gil and all these other great architects. But I mean, we're talking about a guy that was very prolific. And, so when you go back and you look at how Justin could play Sawgrass and win there, he didn't have to be a great putter. But the way that he has learned to control his arm speed when he hits his wedges from the best in the world, right? The GOAT. I mean, we're talking about Tiger. Since he started hanging out with him, you could really see the difference in the way that he controls his arm speed when he hits short shots. And that's when you know someone's super confident in the way that they hit short, like anything around the green, right? Because everyone's always like thinking about, TrackMan world. It's like, smash factor is like supposed to be 1.5. How hard can I hit my driver? Well, when you hit short shots, it's the exact opposite. We want our arm speed. It's almost like we're pitching a ball, like we're playing lawn darts or cornhole or something like that. We want our arm speed to match the speed we want the ball to leave. So that's more of a 1-to-1 ratio. And it's tough for people to slow things down. So the combination for JT that he can be very creative off the tee, see and shape shots, and then use that wedge game, and he doesn't have to be a great putter, in my mind, makes him a favorite over Jordan and a lot of guys in this field. JT is definitely someone I have great interest in watching this week here at Muirfield.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned the stadium course. Just looking at this, here are players who have finished in the top 6 at a U.S. Open at Pinehurst #2 who have won the Players. Ricky Fowler, Jason Day, Henrik Stenson, Davis Love III, Sergio Garcia, Tiger Woods, Tim Clark. All of them, top 6s in U.S. Opens at Pinehurst #2, didn't just contend at the Players, won it. So it's a very interesting connection between two places you would never associate, you would think, on the surface with one another at all.
Gary, go back to 99. Look who finished T7. You got Hal Sutton, right? Be the right club today, right? You got David Duval. I mean, it goes on. And it comes back to, I mean, we are what we see. We are creatures of our culture and our community and the way that we're raised. So at the end of the day, it's no surprise that Pete Dye has so much Ross in what he does.
Yeah. The other thing I think is that Dye, and I think he took this from Ross, is that there are illusions when it comes to angles, and the best angle is to take on trouble. Which gives you the best result in terms of where you're going to play the next shot from. And that is very applicable when you start thinking about second shots and where you want to take it on off the tee at #2. And it's very relatable to the stadium course. When you look at this major, it's the first one is the way it's now constructed, with the PGA now being in May, where we have qualifiers. And a number of these qualifiers are good players who are tour players who had to go through the qualifying process based on what we have seen, based on who is in the field. Or there are guys who, based on the futures and when you look at their odds, that stand out to you as far as a profilable player in Pinehurst #2?
I mean, there's a couple guys, but if there's one thing we've learned now in the second year of the signature process, is that when the best players come together, it starts to bring out, the best champions, right? So if you had to qualify to get your way into Pinehurst, then we know that, you're not ranked high enough in the official World Golf Ranking, which is a 2-year measure of how well you're doing against your peers. And the fact that now we're squeezing those guys into this situation, and, so someone might say, hey, Keith, well, how about the live conversation? Well, I think last year they had 13 guys in the U.S. Open, and this year they have 12. So they're still getting the same amount of representation, and the names that are factored there are the names that that we know. It's going to be Brooks, and a lot of people forget they didn't even know Brooks at that point. But in 2014, he was T4?
Yes.
Right.
First top 5 in a major.
Yeah. And, he did win at Shinnecock, and that's going to be a very similar skill set, the ability to flight the ball into these greens. And then, of course, all of those turtleback style greens. So it's one of those things where, like, I have a tough time, even when it comes to any signature event, trying to find tremendous value down the board, because it's just really tough for Denny McCarthy to beat Victor Hovland over the course of 73 holes on a golf course like Muirfield Village Golf Club last year, or beat Scotty Scheffler. I mean, those guys are just that much better. If you look at the top 10 from Augusta, I mean, all of the names. So I think that there's these wonderful stories, and I think that some of those guys, we know they're in good form, like the big rig, Harry Higgs, right? The guy's won 2 Korn Ferry Tour events, and then all of a sudden he qualified.
Yeah.
So, the guy is on a super heater right now. Is he going to win? And his odds aren't, he's going to be obviously triple digits. Probably not. But when you try to diversify your card and you have some fun, why is golf betting so much fun? Well, first of all, it's the 4-day lottery, Gary.
Yep.
Right? Like if you want to bet on football or any other sport, you got to wait 7 months to find the victor. And like so many things have to happen and fall in place. In 4 days, you can give me 20 to 1 and I'll pay you out. And you can't do that on a Sunday, with all due respect to the NFL and college football on a Saturday. You just can't. And the second thing are prop bets. There are just an infinite amount. We're going to have 156 players there. So some of those guys that you speak of, right, that you bring up that are these great stories, there's going to be angles there to play them on your betting card as you diversify it out for a top 40 or for a top 20, and you'll be able to get a good number on a guy like Harry Higgs that might be 250 to 1 to win the whole thing. He might be 10 to 1 to come in at a top 20, and then you go, well, I could see that happening. This guy's playing great. He had I think he was top 5 at Kiowa when Phil won. If not, he was definitely top 10. So he's been there before. He can get it around. And maybe he kind of fills the role of Jason Gore down there at Pinehurst number 2. I'm not quite sure, but like those are the ways that I look at those situations, because the prop bets, 156 players, 18 holes a day, over 4 days. It's just too much fun not to include some of those people. Will they win? Of course not.
No.
But they can win for you, and they can create multiple Sunday sweats when we're having fun, you and I watching, at Pinehurst number 2 this year. And we're saying, we're laughing back and forth, and we're like, oh, I got Higgs top 10. Keith, we got to get him across he's leaking oil. He's on 6, he's on 15. He missed the green. Oh my God. This is what makes it so much fun to bet on golf. Like I said it before, I'm a golf dork, right? I've loved golf my whole life. Right. I've got a closet full of sweater vests, and love me or hate me. Right. I was born in New Jersey. So I like to bet. Right. But I make it so much fun. It goes back to my, history of being the director of golf. At Springdale Golf and Country Club. Right. I was the director of fun. I wasn't the director of golf. It was a self-appointed title. That's the mantra for my life. These are the things that I love to do. And now that I can change the narrative around the game by getting people to bet and have fun and watch, because people aren't watching enough. But you know what? There's a latent audience out there that is betting on the game and having so much fun, like I love to talk about. And those folks, they want to see more shots, and that's why you hear that theme all the time when it comes to coverage.
The duality of you, the man with all the sweater vests, who also is the gambler from New Jersey. You're the unicorn. How do people win with Tiger at Pinehurst? What's the best approach to playing Tiger? Is it a made cut, miscut? Is it a top 25? How do you win with Tiger?
Tiger's market for the last year and a half or so has basically been make or miss the cut. And then it becomes a live enterprise. Once that he does make the cut, do we feel like this walk is a lot easier than Augusta National? It's a lot easier than Valhalla. There'll be less fatigue on the leg and the back. The weather should be warm enough that it's not damp and cool, that he can get the back. The back is really a bigger concern right now than the leg itself, and my history. I know Tiger very well. I worked at Isleworth from 1998 to 2003. I was there during all the glory years. Summer 2000, 3 majors, 10 million, 10 wins, summer of love in our mind, as the staff. Every time the guy returned, we were having another party to celebrate a major championship. It was incredible. So, I'm as much of a Tiger homer as anybody, but realistically, as I am handicapping the event, the best we can do is say, hey, Tiger will make the cut, because he generally does. He looks like he's in good form in order to do such that. He had 2 top 3s in 99 and 2005. So we like him to do that. And then it gets into the live betting enterprise, which is another part of what makes golf betting so much fun. People love to live bet events now, which means that they're doing it in game or as part of, watching, right? They see someone start off with 3 hot birdies, and they say, oh, I'm going to get this guy to be a top 10 today, or I'm going to pick him in a head-to-head matchup. And that's another reason why golf betting is so much fun. You want to live bet the Super Bowl, Gary, it's 4 hours. You want to live bet Pinehurst number 2, it's 4 days. Think about that, right? You have all the time in the world to get those transactions in, and then again, increase your emotional connection to what's going on. You have given so much back to the game with the years of coverage that you have had, and the way with which the reverence with which you speak about it, right? And I know that comes down from your dad, and the way with the respect with which you treat all of this, right? But guess what? Like the opportunity to be and support and be tailing a player as they come up the 18th hole, and maybe they're somewhat of a long shot at 50 to 1, you're going to feel that emotional connection. If that guy, let's say it's Denny McCarthy. Let's go really deep. Let's say he's 150 to 1 to win, and he has a chance to do it on Sunday. Imagine what you're feeling like on your couch or in your studio, or you and I, if we're backing him, we're standing behind the 18th green there. We're like losing our minds. That's the only time we'll ever get to, we've been golf guys our whole life. That's the only time you're ever going to get to feel that. And that's so much fun. And it doesn't matter if it's $5 or $500.
No, that's absolutely true. So, with respect to people getting all of your information, of which, again, you're constantly churning stuff out, providing information, giving more data, more context for the people who want to get that at Read the Line? What's the easiest way to do that?
Well, readtheline.com is certainly the content hub for all the different things that I do. I am now the betting content lead for Golf Digest. So you'll see on a week like Pinehurst, you'll see basically an article a day. But, on most weeks, you'll see 4 articles from me. If you go back to the Masters and the PGA, those player rankings that come out where I rank I gave it away, but I rank every player in the field. I am the person that writes that. And what I think is unique about that, when it comes to the world of golf, I mean, there's so many wonderful storytellers like you, but I come at it from the perspective of being a PGA professional. I was very fortunate to win 5 awards in my tenure as a golf professional in green grass, and none more important to me than Golf Professional of the Year in 2019 in the state of New Jersey. And that perspective puts me in a place where when I write or when I perform in a podcast like this for you, or I go on new channels like a Sports Grid, which is a 24/7 sports center for sports betting, right? And I am their golf lead. I approach this much like you would. I put a tie on, I give golf its reverence. And as such, those fans that are out there are having the best time figuring it out. So go to readtheline.com. You can subscribe for free. We have a newsletter that comes out every Wednesday. I cover the LPGA, yes, the ladies and the men. I picked 30 winners in the last 30 months, pre-tournament. Golf pros know things, right? More than just dotting cards and telling you can't play during a frost delay. I see things out there, and that level of edge, if you are a bettor, is significant. There's also a paid version of the newsletter, but go to readtheline.com, check it out. There's so much content there, and you'll have the best time from the Director of Fun.
And by the way, your presentation, your appearance, Peter Millar greatly appreciates the way you present yourself as one of our proud partners here. Can you very simply tell me your top 3 plays for the U.S. Open?
You have to put Scott. I'm putting Scotty aside, so there's a disclaimer there, right? At his odds, I want to expand my card more, but I'm going to go with Colin. I'm going to go with Cam Smith, and I'm going to save the last one because it'll be longer odds and it'll be a lot of fun to watch. And you know what? Read the Line's a business, so go check it out, folks. Readtheline.com.
Very good. Go to readtheline.com. Thank you for carving out the time. I know you're busy. I'll look forward to being with you at Pinehurst and watching one of the most important championships in the state that I reside in. Have a good week, my friend. I'll see you next week.
Gary, you've inspired me for so long. I really appreciate the time for me to tell my story. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again to Keith for joining me. And most importantly, thank you to all of you for watching and listening this 5 Clubs U.S. Open wagering special. And again, Keith's website is readtheline.com. Enjoy the 123rd United States Open Championship.